Now, I guess I wasn't aware that Canada provided a bunch of milk to the United States, but I'm admittedly not a dairy expert, so I enjoy dairy, but I don't know where all the milk comes from. And I would take that to mean that lumber for houses and potentially dairy prices could be affected by that tariff. If we get more details on it, we'll let you know. I'm just telling you, that was announced just a short time ago. Right now, we're lucky to be joined by Jared Halpern of Fox News Radio. Jared, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. You know, the Drudge Report and the like are happy to point out that the president has backed away from his wall funding, and they seem to be blaming Paul Ryan for it.
Well, I'm not sure who's to blame other than the notion that you were going to need to get Democrats on board to avoid a government shutdown, and Democrats weren't going to vote for a spending plan that appropriated a lot of money for this border wall. And it is largely due to the fact that it remains unpopular among Democrats, remains unpopular, by the way, among some key Republicans as well, and that Democrats and some Republicans want to deal with it on its own, as part of its own sort of appropriations process, and not attached on to this spending plan that needs to be passed in the next 4 days. And it sounds like the White House, President Trump, is willing to say, fine, there will be money, it looks like, for border enforcement, for border security included within this package that they're working on. And the larger fight over funding a border wall looks like will be moved down the line to the summer and fall budget season.
Yeah, I wondered if they don't have enough votes to get it passed right now, why should we believe that they'll be able to, that the Democrats are ever going to agree to fund it?
Well, I'm not sure Democrats are ever going to agree to fund it.
Okay.
I mean, and argument number one from Democrats is they were under the impression Mexico was funding it.
Yeah, I heard that.
Right.
Maybe they will through a tariff, according to what Wilbur Ross said a minute ago.
Well, that's actually going to be a big part, not to, continue on this fun you're having with the Commerce Secretary.
Right,
but,
sorry.
Who I have not seen in the briefing room before. I think this was his first time.
Yeah.
There is, the next step in sort of the agenda, if you will, assuming that they get back to health care or not, is going to be tax reform, and this broad tax reform, from what we understand, that deals not just with individual and corporate tax rates, but potentially deals with this border adjustment tax and what that looks like, and whether or not that's a way then to fund these projects, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's this border wall that the president wants to do. So, I mean, there is some tie into all of this, and there is, from sort of a legislative standpoint, maybe a reason to hold off on having this broader discussion over funding a wall for the fall, because that's when they're going to try and move forward on some of this tax reform.
Yeah, we're talking to Jared Halpern from Fox News Radio. So on Friday and again yesterday, I heard mention of the possibility of a health care vote maybe by the end of this week. What's the latest on that?
It's not going to happen by the end of this week.
No.
That seems really unlikely, and I say that citing, people within the administration, people here on the Hill, that it seems unlikely that it's going to happen this week. And largely it's a matter of timing. The House of Representatives gets back into session this afternoon from their 2.5-week recess. And as we've talked about, the number one priority for this week is extending government funding beyond Friday night. You also don't have any legislative text yet for whatever sort of agreements may have been made in principle over that recess. Members of Congress, Republicans, are going to want to read that. They're going to want to know what it is that they're voting on. You're probably going to have a fairly robust debate on some of that. That's not to say that they're weeks and weeks away, and I do think it remains a goal. But a lot of the talk of getting it done this week, I think, was wrapped into how strong a desire was there to get this done within the 100-day milestone,
sure,
which is on Friday or Saturday. So it just seems from a timing standpoint, it's unlikely that they can get the health care in addition to the other things that are kind of top of the agenda right now. But I do think that health care is not going away. that is going to continue to be a top priority, a top goal for Republicans in the House and Senate, primarily in the House right now. The Senate, by the way, is a whole other ballgame. And as much as we've talked about, can they get to 216 votes in the House? They still have a pretty steep mountain to climb in the Senate as well.
Sure, and
because many of the same disagreements are going to exist within Republicans in that conference too.
Sure, yeah, I was going to say that on the House side, I heard yesterday that it was the Freedom Caucus that was a little more on board with whatever they're talking about in the second round, and it was the Tuesday morning group that had bucked it a little more. So who knows? We haven't seen it.
The balance they've tried to find, right? If you acquiesce a little bit to the more conservative hardliners, then you're going to chip away at some of the support from moderates. If you start to appease some of the demands of the moderates, you're going to chip away at some of the support from the more conservative hardliners. Thus is the challenge in legislating.
Remains to be, as Donald Trump has learned painfully in his first 100 days, right?
Well, probably not just this president.
Yeah, that's probably true. All right, Jared Halpern, thanks so much for your time.
All right, take care.
Have a great day. Thank you. Jared Halpern from Fox helping us out there with that reporting from D.C. So it's stand by. It ought to be an interesting week or two. I mean, I know they really want to get this health reform bill done. I just wish they'd just go back to the repeal it on day one, and re-vote for whatever you want to replace it with on day two. It seems that simple. It's not going to happen overnight anyway. I think they're making this more difficult than it needs to be. Andy, thanks for calling and thanks for holding on.
Thank you. I'd like to offer a different effective proposal for the wall, much cheaper too. And please allow me to finish before you say, well, that's kind of extreme. What I would do is this. If I was the president, I would have California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas send the National Guard to the border. When they're set up, I then for 3 days would inundate Central America and Mexico with pamphlets, radio, and newspaper saying the following: if you and/or your children come to my country illegally, or you send your children to my country illegally, we will shoot and kill you, period. Now, I know a lot of people say, you really shoot a child? Let me say this. During Vietnam, when a child walked up on the soldiers and had a live grenade in his hand, sorry, the kid was dead. Over here in the Middle East right now, if a child walks up with a body bomb on it, sorry, that kid's dead. Well, I guarantee you one thing. Right now, just the proposal of the wall and making these people go back, if they think they're going to come across the border and might get killed, you know what? I think we're going to see a train going out of this country real quick. It's the only way to do this. You have to hit hard. Quit playing around with these people. See, technically, a person who's an alien is let me say real quickly, I'll finish real quick. A person who's an alien is actually an invader. An invader is an invasion, and an invasion is an act of war. You know how you deal with an act of war? You kill your enemy. These people will do to us what we did to Russia. Otherwise, they will bankrupt us.
Well, Andy, I mean, I'm with you on the illegal alien thing and the people breaking in. I appreciate you calling. You and I both know that would never fly politically in this country. First of all, I'm not sure that the president. I don't know if the president can even order a state National Guard to the border. I think the governors would have to do that. Governor Brown would never agree to it. But as far as killing them, yeah, it's not a. I mean, it's like a misdemeanor. Crossing the border is not even a felony. Maybe a better approach would be bumping up the penalty for breaking into this country. At which point somebody could be arrested the moment they stepped over the border because they just committed a felony. Maybe that's the better way to do it. If you're going to come in here illegally, there are some definite penalties to it. But we've long ago passed the point where anybody would stomach any sort of violence down there. I agree. Now, here's my issue. When I did go to the border with Governor Matt Blunt, when he was still in office, we flew down there with a crew from Channel 4. We got in a military helicopter and we flew along the border. And it's when we had the Missouri National Guard station down there. You honestly couldn't tell where the U.S. ended and Mexico began. There was no wall. It was just a field, just a sandy field with tumbleweed on it, right in the southern corner of Arizona or New Mexico. And you couldn't tell where it was. So the National Guards down there, they're like Barney Fife. They were